It was an ordinary Tuesday at Millwood High School. The sun was shining brightly through the classroom windows as I sat there, my mind wandering during yet another mundane history lecture. The teacher's droning voice was background noise to the whispers and occasional giggles of my classmates. Little did we know that the ordinary would soon turn into the extraordinary, an experience that would haunt us for the rest of our lives. The day took a chilling turn when the intercom crackled to life, interrupting our history lesson. The principal's voice, usually calm and reassuring, sounded tense. "Attention, everyone. We are initiating a lockdown. This is not a drill. I repeat, this is not a drill. Teachers, please lock your classroom doors, turn off the lights, and gather your students away from the windows. Students, remain silent. We will provide further information as it becomes available." Panic spread through the classroom like wildfire. We had practiced lockdown drills before, but they had always been announced in advance. This was real, and the uncertainty of the situation was paralyzing. Our teacher, Mr. Anderson, quickly jumped into action. He turned off the lights, locked the door, and guided us to a corner of the room away from any windows. The anxiety in the room was palpable as we huddled in the darkness. We waited in silence, the seconds dragging on like hours. The only sound was the heavy breathing of my classmates, which grew more labored with each passing minute. Outside, the school's bustling hallways had fallen eerily quiet. The only thing we could hear was the faint hum of the heating system. The minutes turned into hours, and still we had no information about what was happening. It felt like we were cut off from the world, trapped in our own little bubble of fear. I couldn't help but think about my family, who were undoubtedly worried sick about me. As time ticked on, rumors began to circulate among the students. Some claimed they had heard gunshots, others swore they had seen an armed intruder. Fear ran rampant as we tried to make sense of the chaos. We clung to the hope that this was just a false alarm, an overreaction. The tension in the room reached its breaking point when we heard a loud banging noise coming from the hallway. It was the sound of someone or something violently hitting the lockers. The fear in the room escalated to sheer terror. Whispers turned to cries, and cries to full-blown panic. Mr. Anderson tried to calm us, but even he was visibly shaken. He stood by the door, his eyes fixed on the entrance as if willing whatever was out there to go away. The banging continued, and I couldn't help but imagine the worst. A deranged intruder with a weapon, determined to break into our classroom. The banging stopped abruptly, and an eerie silence settled over the room once more. The stillness was almost more terrifying than the noise. It was as if the entire world had frozen, waiting for the next shoe to drop. Then, a voice came over the intercom, one that sent shivers down my spine. It was the voice of a man, cold and detached. "We know you're in there. There's no way out. Surrender, and this will be quick." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. We were trapped, vulnerable, and at the mercy of an unknown assailant. The fear in the room was palpable, a living, breathing thing that wrapped itself around us, squeezing the air from our lungs. In the darkness, I could see the frightened faces of my classmates, their eyes wide with terror. Some were silently sobbing, others clung to each other for comfort. I couldn't blame them. I was scared out of my mind too. Mr. Anderson, however, refused to yield to fear. He whispered to us in the darkness, trying to reassure us that help was on the way. He said the authorities were aware of the situation and that we needed to remain calm. But as the minutes turned into hours, hope waned. There was no sign of rescue, and the voice on the intercom continued to taunt us, promising a quick end if we surrendered. The atmosphere in the room became suffocating, a mixture of fear, despair, and helplessness. As the hours dragged on, the silence outside our classroom was replaced by strange, unidentifiable noises. It was as if the school had become a different world, one where the rules of reality no longer applied. Shadows danced in the hallway, and I couldn't help but imagine all sorts of horrifying scenarios. At some point, we received another announcement, but this time it was from a different voice, one that filled us with a glimmer of hope. It was a police officer who informed us that they had secured the building, and a SWAT team was en route to deal with the intruder. Relief washed over us like a tidal wave, and for the first time in what felt like an eternity, I dared to hope that we might make it out of this alive. We weren't alone, and help was on the way. The minutes dragged on, but we could hear the distant sound of sirens approaching. It was a symphony of hope, a signal that our ordeal was finally coming to an end. But just as we began to breathe a little easier, a chilling realization dawned on us. The banging, the voice on the intercom, the eerie noises in the hallway. They had all ceased as soon as the police were on their way. It was as if the intruder had vanished into thin air, leaving us to wonder where he had gone. The SWAT team arrived, and they quickly moved through the school, securing every inch of the building. As they entered our classroom, their heavily armed presence was both reassuring and intimidating. They assured us that we were safe now and that we could leave the room. We stepped out into the hallway, blinking in the harsh light of the overhead fluorescents. The school that had been our prison just a short time ago now felt like a surreal, nightmarish landscape. The police questioned us, and we gave our accounts of what had transpired during the lockdown. But as I spoke, a sense of unease gnawed at me. Where had the intruder gone? Why had he disappeared as soon as help arrived? The hours that followed were a blur of interviews with law enforcement, worried parents reuniting with their children, and a barrage of media personnel descending on the scene. The incident was making headlines, and everyone was trying to make sense of what had happened. In the days that followed, the school implemented new security measures, and the community rallied together to support one another. But the questions remained. Who was the intruder, and why had he targeted our school? The police had no answers, and it seemed as though the perpetrator had vanished without a trace. The incident left a lasting mark on our school and our lives. It was a stark reminder that even the most ordinary of days can turn into a nightmare in the blink of an eye. We would forever carry the memory of that terrifying lockdown with us, a reminder of the fragility of life and the courage that can emerge in the face of unspeakable fear. As I reflect on that day, I can't help but wonder about the intruder. Who was he, and what drove him to threaten our school? The answers remain elusive, and the fear of the unknown lingers. One thing is for sure, though. I will never take the safety of an ordinary day for granted again.